If you would have asked me a couple of years ago if I was going to use a 60 hertz display in 2025 that's not AMOLED, I would have looked at you like you were crazy. And yet, here we are. I have always been an extreme tech nerd who would only use devices with the best of the best specs. But ever since I got my iPad mini a few months ago, I cannot put this device down. I am so surprised by the iPad mini. It took me a good while to come up with this conclusion, but I am going to tell you why I use the iPad mini now for everything. When I first got the iPad mini, I had my concerns with the display and with the lack of screen size. I thought that the device would be too small in order for me to get real work done. And I had a lot of times where I said, hey, should I return this and go ahead and order a iPad Pro? But when I settled myself down and said, hey, don't worry about the screen, just use the device as it's intended to be used, which is a very portable, usable, light, carryable iPad, that is when my mind changed. I am someone who really loves to read, and I couldn't see myself purchasing a Kindle ever, just because of that singular use case. But with the iPad mini, I can read all of my books, all of my articles, and doing it while also having that ability to do anything I want productivity-wise, all in a package that is this perfect in hand. I also picked up the matte matcha screen protector. And the way this screen protector reduces glares while giving off a soft, similarly adjusted Kindle screen, it has totally transformed my usage for my iPad mini. Now, this particular screen protector does degrade the screen just a little bit. I definitely notice it, but I will say that if you use your iPad in dark theme, the screen degradation is a lot less noticeable. But it gives you this really good friction feel, and it also gave me a different feeling device compared to my iPhone 16 Pro Max. Once I got the new screen protector, and once I started using the mobile hotspot feature on my phones, and connected this iPad just like this iPad would have been connected if it was a cellular iPad, that has changed the game for me. Now, one of the big downsides of the display is obviously the things I mentioned earlier, but it also only gets up to 500 nits. And now that I have this new screen protector, the glares are severely reduced. So even when I am outside, the matte screen protector just makes it easier to see your display. And when I initially picked up this iPad mini, I did not get the Apple Folio case. I thought it was too expensive for what it is. And same thing with the Apple Pencil Pro. I had an iPad mini 6 and an iPad Pro 2018 that I had an Apple Pencil with. And I told myself, hey, I want the iPad mini 7, but if I have to buy a new Apple Pencil, then I just won't buy it. And I feel like if you have an iPad in 2025, you almost have to buy an Apple Pencil. I now use the Apple Pencil for every interaction on the display, and it is so fun to use. It is so nice to not get your fingerprints all over the display, and I love how precise the tip of the Apple Pencil is in comparison to your actual finger. Now that I can see outside, and now that I have an outside connection, I have taken this thing to parks. I've used it as my grocery shopping list. I've taken it into the office and just used it as my fun device whenever I was on break, or if I just wanted to check my YouTube analytics and comments and things like that. I have so much fun using this larger display. The 16 Pro Max obviously has a great, large, fantastic display, but the usability of the Apple Pencil is unmatched. Other than using the Apple Pencil for the user interface, I do use Procreate to play around and create different things. And I also use Adobe Lightroom quite a bit. But now that I have a mobile connection, I can do this from anywhere. Now, obviously, everything I just mentioned, I can do with an iPad 11-inch. But whenever you are at home, sitting on the couch, laying down upside down, looking at your mobile device, this guy is just so light that it really is unbeatable. So the downsides of the display itself are outmatched by the benefits of its size. And I just love how this iPad fits perfectly in my bag. I typically have my work laptop, EDC gear, and iPad mini in my bag. If I were to put the larger iPads in the bag with its other contents, it would be a lot harder to squeeze it in. Now, outside of 60 hertz and the brightness not being the best, the actual screen itself is extremely sharp. The pencil density is fantastic. So I do use this a lot for multimedia, and the display is actually very accurate. So if I want to go in and color grade my videos or work on Lightroom projects, as an example, that accurate display is highly beneficial for somebody like me. And whenever I am using my iPad for multimedia, the speakers on here are really good. It doesn't have the 4-speaker setup like the iPad Pro does, but it is definitely suffice with those 2 surround sound speakers. And the battery just keeps getting better and better. I typically use the iPad a lot, like I said, and I can usually get a couple of days out of it before I have to charge this. Now, I can't really speak on charging times because I'll usually plug it in and either go cook dinner or do something. It usually takes me hours before I have to go back and use the iPad. So I honestly don't even know how fast this guy charges, but I just never have to worry about it. The battery for me is good enough, especially since I can use it for multiple hours, for multiple days before I need to charge it again. And that is with the Apple Pencil connected to it. And this A17 Pro processor, along with Apple Intelligence, along with the double storage on the base model, along with the double RAM on the base model, compared to the iPad mini 6, the performance on this device is miles better than the iPad mini 6 ever was. Everything on this iPad opens fast and consistent. The screen size isn't necessarily ideal, but I do edit a lot of my clips and videos on this iPad mini. I can go on and on. I'm just infatuated. And Sidecar. I found out about Sidecar. I can't believe I never used this feature before, but I can work on my M4 Mac Mini and use the iPad display as a second display with my Mac Mini to where I can actually use the mouse and keyboard, drag files back and forth, and use this as a literal additional display with my Mac Mini. That is absolutely insane. Apple does not do enough advertising when it comes to the Sidecar feature. I just love my iPad mini. Last but not least, when you compare this iPad to the iPad Pros, one thing that you really have to think about, especially if you are looking to buy, the iPad Pros themselves are typically broadcasted as devices that are MacBook replacements. I feel like for the majority of people, it makes more sense to have a phone, an iPad mini, and a MacBook as opposed to having a phone, an iPad Pro, and a MacBook. The jump between an iPad Pro and a typical MacBook is just not large enough. And I feel like if you get over the downsides of this device, you will have a better experience in doing it this way than that way. Ultimately, it's up to you, but that is my perspective. So if you enjoyed this video, let me know. Let me know what you guys think about the iPad mini, especially compared to the larger iPads. And if you own one, let me know what your most use case is for. Do you have a cellular iPad mini, or did you create a cellular iPad mini like I did, just using the simple Hotspot feature from my phone? And don't forget to like and subscribe if you liked this video. I appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.